The Art of Negotiation. Master Persuasion and Win All Deals. Audiobook. Introduction. Negotiating is a life skill. Negotiating is not a technique reserved for entrepreneurs, lawyers, or expert salespeople. It is, in essence, a life skill, a profound way of communicating with the world and get what we want without having to impose or give in completely. Negotiating is not just about closing deals or achieving business agreements. Negotiating is knowing how to ask for what we want, setting limits when necessary, listening with empathy, understanding what the other person really needs, and building solutions that benefit both parties. Negotiating is first and foremost understanding the invisible play of interests, emotions, and perceptions that occurs in every meaningful conversation you have throughout the day. From the moment you wake up, you're already negotiating. Maybe with your partner about who will take the kids to school. Maybe with yourself about whether to procrastinate on the alarm or start your day with discipline. In your work, you negotiate deadlines, responsibilities, raises, vacations, priorities. Even with your friends, you negotiate the place to meet, the time of a call, the way in which each one contributes to the bond. With your children, you negotiate rules, consequences, rewards. And with yourself, you constantly negotiate between desire and action, between comfort and growth. This is the first essential truth. We are all negotiators, whether we want to or not, but only some learn to be conscious and effective negotiators. This audiobook is made for you to be one of them. Many people feel resistance to the word negotiation because they associate it with manipulation, coldness, or confrontation. But this is a limiting belief that has stopped millions of people from improving their results in life. Negotiating is not manipulating. Negotiating is not forcing. It is not about bending the other party or imposing your point of view. On the contrary, the best negotiators do not seek to win by crushing, but to generate agreements where both parties feel heard, valued, and satisfied. Negotiating with integrity is an act of respect, both for yourself and for others. It is putting your shameless needs on the table, but also being willing to listen to them from the other without prejudice. It is dialogue with strategy, yes, but with a human conscience. It is influencing without forcing, persuading without manipulating, moving forward without running over. Therefore, if you ever thought that to negotiate you had to be cold, calculating, or even aggressive, this audiobook will be a turning point in your way of seeing communication. Throughout these hours, you will discover that negotiating is not a dark art, but a powerful tool within everyone's reach. You will learn why some always get what they want without seeming insistent, and how you can develop that same ability. You will see that the key is not to talk more, but to speak better. That the true power of persuasion is not in always having the right answers, but in asking the right questions. That sometimes a silence can say more than 1,000 arguments, and that many times the difference between a missed opportunity and a brilliant agreement is simply knowing when to pause, when to look into the eyes, and when to say the right thing in the right tone. This audiobook is a practical and transformative guide designed to help you negotiate in real life, in everyday conversations, in work decisions, in personal relationships, in difficult moments. Here you will not only find theory, but also actionable principles, examples, mental exercises, and strategies that you can apply today. As you progress through each chapter, you will begin to change the way you see human interactions. You will begin to notice when people are truly open to an agreement and when they are just defending themselves. You will know how to stay calm when the other party gets excited. You will learn to listen not only to what is said, but also to what is silenced. And most importantly, you will discover how to make others listen to your voice without having to shout, without having to impose yourself, and without feeling guilty for wanting something better for you. Because negotiating, at the end of the day, is just that, a tool to build a life where your desires, your ideas, and your needs have a clear, legitimate, and respected space.
And no matter what your occupation or your age is, everyone, absolutely everyone, has something to gain if we learn to negotiate intelligently, with empathy, and with purpose. If you ever felt frustrated for not getting what you wanted, if you ever kept quiet for fear of rejection, if you ever gave too much and then regretted it, if you ever had the right thing but didn't know how to express it, this audiobook is for you. Here you will find a new way of expressing yourself, a new way of relating, and above all, a new way of winning. Not from ego, but from understanding, not from struggle, but from influence. Because mastering the art of negotiation is not just to close more deals, it is to live with more personal power, with more connection with others, and with a voice that will finally be heard with clarity, respect, and authority. Be prepared, because what you are about to learn will not only make you a better negotiator, it will make you a stronger, more confident, and freer person. But before continuing, write in the comments from which city you are listening to this audiobook. And if this message is resonating with you, subscribe to the channel now. This way you make sure you don't miss any content that nourishes your mind and brings you every day closer to the life you really deserve. There is no time to lose. Now we continue. Chapter 1. The Psychology of the Winning Negotiator. A strategic negotiator doesn't enter a conversation with the intention of improvising or winning at all costs. He enters with a different mindset, a clear vision, and an emotional preparation that distinguishes him from the majority. While others react out of impulse or fear, the strategic negotiator observes, analyzes, and acts intelligently. He understands that negotiating is not simply saying what he wants or defending a position, but reading the terrain, understanding the other party, and playing for the long term. This person is not carried away by the emotions of the moment, but has trained his mind to maintain focus even in the midst of tense or uncertain situations. His thinking is based on principles, not on passing emotions, and that difference makes him someone who influences deeply without having to impose himself. The first great trait of a winning negotiator is his ability to remain calm under pressure. This is not an innate skill, but a mental muscle that is developed with practice and awareness. Pressure is always present in any important negotiation. It can come in the form of a limited time, an unfavorable offer, an aggressive counterparty, or even the internal fear of making a mistake. But the trained negotiator knows that giving in to pressure makes him easy to manipulate, while staying composed transforms him into the emotional axis of the conversation. That serenity is not passivity, it is power, because the more calm you project, the more security you transmit, and the more confident you seem, the more you control the pace of the exchange. In a negotiation room, whoever controls the rhythm controls the direction. This is where the essential difference between the reactive mind and the conscious mind comes in. The reactive mind responds immediately, often infiltrated, carried away by pride, fear, or the desire to be right. It is the mind that interrupts, that accelerates, that needs to impose its point quickly to feel in control. But the conscious mind operates from another place. It observes before acting. It gives itself permission to process before speaking. It accepts the discomfort of silence and uses it as a tool. It understands that not every attack needs immediate defense, and that many times the real power is in waiting for the right moment. When you negotiate with a conscious mind, you are not only more strategic, you are also more difficult to read. And in negotiation, being unpredictable is a huge advantage. However, to reach that level of mental mastery, you have to go through a process of deprogramming, because we all carry beliefs that sabotage our results in silence. Ideas inherited from the childhood, from the environment, from past experiences.
For example, many believe that asking is annoying, that making the other person uncomfortable with a request is being selfish or rude. Others believe that if someone says no, that means personal rejection, or that if one insists, they will be perceived as desperate. These beliefs, although they may seem small, have a huge impact on how we behave when negotiating. They make us give in too quickly, speak insecurely, avoid asking for what we really want, or give up prematurely.
The winning negotiator has identified these limiting beliefs and replaced them with more useful and realistic principles. He believes, for example, that asking is not annoying, it is communicating. That receiving a no is failure, is part of the way to yes. That insisting with respect is not desperation, it is commitment. That listening more is not weakness, it is strategy. These new beliefs become the firm ground on which their conversations are built, and as a result, not only do they get better agreements, but they do so with less emotional exhaustion. His mindset is resilient, focused, and above all, trained to see beyond the superficial. While others dwell on what is being said, he focuses on what is really wanted. While others struggle to win the point, he builds paths for everyone to win in the long run. Change starts with how you talk to yourself before entering a negotiation. Do you think, I hope they don't get angry? Or do you think, I'm going to find a way to add value and defend my proposal clearly? Do you think, I'm sure they're going to reject me? Or do you think, I can handle any answer with dignity and firmness? The questions you ask yourself define the energy with which you present yourself, and the energy with which you present yourself profoundly conditions the answer you will receive. That's why every great negotiator not only prepares his arguments, he also prepares his mentality. He reviews his thoughts, reinforces his useful beliefs, and reminds himself that his value is not in what the other party says, but in what he is able to sustain with presence, conviction, and respect. To reach that level of preparation, it is necessary to make strategic thinking a habit. It is not about memorizing techniques, but about living from a negotiating awareness, observing your daily conversations, identifying when you react without thinking. Question your own beliefs every time you are sabotaged. Practice the art of pausing. Learn to reformulate, and above all, commit to a new identity, that of someone who not only asks, but leads the conversation from a place of serenity and clarity. Because that is the real secret of the winning negotiator. His power does not come from dominating the other, but from having learned to dominate himself. Chapter 2. Transforming Pressure into Trust. The fear of no has been one of the greatest enemies of human potential. It is so ingrained in our minds that many times we prefer not to ask, not to speak, not to insist, just to avoid the discomfort of a possible refusal. This emotional response is deeper than it seems. The no activates old memories, the disapproval of our parents, the rejection of an authority figure, the shame of being judged. So a simple word becomes a trigger for insecurity. But here is the truth that liberates. The no isn't personal. It is information. It is part of the process. It is a sign that the conversation is underway. Great negotiators are not afraid of no. They expect it. They know that behind each no there is an opportunity to reformulate, redirect, or discover what really matters to the other party. When you understand this, it no longer stops being a threat and becomes a tool. Each negative can be a stepping stone towards a more solid affirmation, as long as you know how to interpret it calmly, without taking it as an attack, without assuming that it is a judgment on your person. But to reach that state of mind where the no does not paralyze, you have to transform pressure into confidence, and that is achieved with mental, emotional, and physical preparation. Pressure by itself is not negative. That energy can sink you or drive you, depending on how you channel it. When you feel nervous before a negotiation, it does not mean that you are weak or ill-prepared. It means that you care, that you're involved. The problem arises when that energy becomes chaotic and disorganized, when your mind begins to run in all directions, anticipating negative scenarios, imagining rejections, overanalyzing every word. At that moment, clarity disappears and your message loses strength. That's why one of the greatest secrets of the expert negotiator is his ability to turn those nerves into presence. Instead of being swept away by anxiety, he anchors himself in the moment. He breathes, observes, becomes aware of his body, and from that center, acts with focus. A powerful technique for this is conscious breathing. It may seem simple, but its impact is immense. Before any important negotiation, close your eyes for a few seconds. Inhale deeply for 4 seconds. Hold your breath for 2 seconds and exhale slowly for 6. Do it 3 times. This sequence activates the parasympathetic system that calms the body and slows down the mind. What you're essentially doing is sending a message to your nervous system. I'm safe. There is no real threat. When your body feels calm, your mind becomes more lucid, and with that lucidity, your ideas flow better. Your tone of voice stabilizes, and your words have more impact. This type of preparation is not optional, it's strategic. A negotiator without control of his internal state is a vulnerable negotiator, but one who masters his energy before entering the conversation is halfway there. The second pillar to transform pressure into confidence is body language. Your body speaks before your words. If you enter a room with your head down, with your shoulders slumped, or with restless hands, you are transmitting insecurity, even if your speech is impeccable. On the contrary, if you stand tall with an open posture, firm feet, direct gaze, and natural pauses when speaking, you project authority without the need to impose. A simple rule: before negotiating, become aware of your posture, adjust your spine, relax your jaw, open your chest. This not only makes you look more confident, it also makes you feel more secure, because physiology directly affects psychology. Your body can be your best ally or your worst enemy in a negotiation, depending on how much control you have over it. And along with your breath and body comes the third component: tactical self-confidence. It's not about having inflated self-esteem, but about constructing confidence based on preparation, experience, and vision. Tactical self-confidence is the certainty that even if you don't have all the answers, you'll know how to navigate any answer. It's knowing that your value doesn't depend on the immediate outcome, but on your ability to hold the conversation with dignity and firmness. It's trusting your ability to listen, to adapt, to reformulate, and above all, to remember that your value is not in what the other party says, but in what you are able to sustain with presence, conviction, and respect. To reach that level of preparation, it is necessary to make strategic thinking a habit. It is not about memorizing techniques, but about living from a negotiating awareness, observing your daily conversations, identifying when you react without thinking. Question your own beliefs every time you are sabotaged. Practice the art of pausing. Learn to reformulate, and above all, commit to a new identity, that of someone who not only asks, but leads the conversation from a place of serenity and clarity. Because that is the real secret of the winning negotiator. His power does not come from dominating the other, but from having learned to dominate himself.
Chapter 3: Communication with Purpose. In every negotiation, what you say matters, but how you say it can be even more decisive. Communication with purpose is what separates the impulsive communicator from the high-level negotiator. Speaking with intention is choosing your words as if each one were an investment. It's understanding that every sentence can open a door or close it forever, that a word spoken with the right tone can calm an attention, inspire confidence, or tip the scales in your favor. Conversely, a misplaced word said without thinking or with the wrong tone can destroy what you've been patiently building for minutes or hours. That's why the foundation of every powerful negotiation starts with this awareness. Don't speak to fill the silence. Speak to steer the conversation with purpose. Many people believe that communicating is talking a lot. They believe that the more they explain, the more compelling their message will be. That if they fill in the empty spaces with arguments, anecdotes, justifications, and data, they will seem more prepared. But here, a rule applies that is sacred in the art of negotiating. Less is more. A concise, clear, and firmly directed message has much more impact than a long speech full of detours and without a central idea. When you talk too much, the other party gets confused, disconnected, or feels invaded. But when you speak just enough, you arouse curiosity, generate respect, and make every word count. Brevity is not a lack of depth, it is evidence of mental clarity. Only someone who has clarity in what they want can express themselves accurately. So before speaking, ask yourself, does this bring clarity, or is it just filling space?
Speaking with intention is not the same as speaking from emotion. When you react impulsively, you give away your power. When you respond with intention, you get it back. In every negotiation, there will be moments of tension, disagreements, or unexpected comments. Most people react, defend themselves, accelerate, interrupt, justify themselves. But the skilled negotiator takes an internal pause. He gives himself a second to feel, process, and then speak from the center, because he knows that words don't go with the wind, especially when you're building a relationship, an alliance, or an important agreement. Every word counts, and that's why every word must have a purpose. It can be affirming your position, asking a strategic question, reframing a point of conflict, or simply reaffirming your presence with meaningful silence. And this is where an aspect that is often ignored but profoundly powerful comes into play: tone, rhythm, and pause. Tone of voice is one of the most influential factors in how your message is received. You can say exactly the same words with two different tones, and the effect will be completely opposite. An "I understand you" said sincerely can open the other person's heart. An "I understand you" said with sarcasm can ignite a battle. Tone conveys emotional intention, and people negotiate from what they feel, not from what they hear. A confident, serene, and empathetic tone is your best card. You don't need to sound aggressive or cold to be respected. You just need to sound clear, firm, and human. Rhythm, on the other hand, is the emotional compass of your message. If you speak too fast, you convey anxiety. If you speak too slowly, you may seem insecure or unclear. But if you manage a natural rhythm with well-placed pauses, you keep the other's attention, generate impact, and project control. Rhythm also allows you to think while you speak, which is essential in complex negotiations. It gives you space to gauge the other's reaction, to adjust your message, to listen beyond the obvious. A well-calibrated rhythm not only makes your message get through, but stays. And the pause is pure gold. In a culture where everyone wants to talk, the one who knows how to pause becomes an authority. The pause creates positive tension. It gives time for what you said to be assented. It allows the other to react. It shows that you're not in a hurry, that you control the time of the conversation, and above all, allows you to listen to what is happening on the other side. Sometimes a pause after asking a question is more powerful than any argument, because silence makes the insecure uncomfortable, but strengthens the leader. If you learn to pause before answering, to pause after making an affirmation, to pause to observe the body language of your interlocutor, you will be in a superior position without having to raise your voice. Communication with purpose also involves knowing when to be silent, and this is probably one of the most difficult skills to master, because being silent is not passivity, it's strategy. There are times when not saying anything is more eloquent than talking. When the other party is insecure, sometimes silence pushes them to reveal more to you. When an offer is on the table, your silence can subtly press without having to insist. When someone tries to provoke you, your silence can be a wall that protects your position without falling into emotional play. Keeping quiet when it is intentional is a tool of power, because it shows that you don't have the need to convince with words, but that you know how to wait for the right moment to impact with precision. Why communicating with purpose? Is to stop talking for the sake of talking. It's assuming that every word that comes out of your mouth is shaping the other person's perception of you. It's consciously choosing what to say, how to say it, and when to say nothing. It's using tone, rhythm, and pause as invisible weapons. And it understands that effective communication is not the one that impresses the most, but the one that connects the most. Because in the end, a negotiation isn't won by speaking louder, but by speaking clearer. You don't win by imposing, but by influencing. You don't win by filling the space with words, but by filling each word with intention. Mastering this way of communicating not only improves your negotiations, it transforms your relationships, your results, and your inner confidence. Because when you learn to speak from intention, not from reaction, you become a person who not only knows what you want, but knows how to achieve it with respect, strategy, and true emotional intelligence. That's the essence of powerful communication. Fewer words, more impact, less noise, more results, less reaction, more leadership. And it all starts with a decision, speaking with purpose or continuing to react randomly. The choice is yours. Chapter 4. Active listening is your silent weapon. Listening is, without exaggeration, one of the most underrated skills that anyone who wants to influence, negotiate, or lead with real impact can develop. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, whoever masters the art of listening becomes magnetic. It's not simply about being silent while the other person speaks. It's also not nodding politely while waiting for your turn to respond. Active listening is a form of leadership. It's an advanced technique of silent influence. It's a way to demonstrate power without raising your voice. Because those who listen with intention have the ability to see beyond words, understand the other party's true needs, and position themselves with strategic advantage in any conversation. When you listen to influence, you're not simply absorbing data, you're looking for clues. You're interpreting hidden emotions, detecting priorities, reading gaps, analyzing contradictions. Every word, every pause, every body expression says something, even when the other person doesn't say it openly. And when you train yourself to listen in this way, you become much more perceptive and much more precise when it comes to responding. While most people are focused on what they're going to say, you're attentive to what is really going on, and that makes you someone hard to fool, hard to destabilize, and extremely persuasive, because your response will always be aligned with the emotional reality of the moment. Listening to respond is reactive. Listening to influence is strategic. The difference is where you place your focus. If you're listening just to think about your counterargument, you're not present, you're stuck in your mind, and at that moment you miss key cues that could give you a huge advantage. But if you listen with all your senses, with your body relaxed, with your eyes attentive, with an open mind, and without the need to be right, then the conversation transforms, because the other feels that they are being understood, not judged. And in that space of true listening, they lower their defenses, open up, and begin to reveal what they really want.
At that point, negotiation stops being a battle and becomes a dance because you are responding from connection, not confrontation. An essential part of this skill is to read what is not said, and that involves paying attention to nonverbal language, the gesture that is repeated when a sensitive topic is mentioned, the sudden rigidity of the body when an idea is proposed, the aversion of gaze when a concern is touched, the breathing that accelerates when an objection arises. The body speaks much louder than words, and when you learn to observe carefully, you can anticipate, you can adapt your proposal in real time, you can discover the true points of interest or resistance, and best of all, you can respond with surgical precision because you already know what matters to the other, even if they haven't said it in words. But to read these subtle gestures, you need to practice presence. You can't do that if you're distracted by your own thoughts. You need to be there in the moment, observing without judgment, feeling the rhythm of the conversation, and staying emotionally centered. Presence is what sharpens your perception. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly you start to see nuances that previously went unnoticed. Listening with presence is also an act of deep respect, and respect breeds openness. It's no coincidence that many people reveal more information to those who simply listen without interrupting, because feeling heard is feeling valued, and feeling valued is the first step to trust, and where there's trust, there's the possibility of agreement. This is where a silent but absolutely powerful tool comes into play, the intentional use of silence. Silence is not empty. Well-managed silence is positive pressure. It's a space for reflection. It's a nonverbal affirmation that you're in control. After a key question, leave a space. Don't fill the silence out of anxiety. Let the other think. Because in that silence, things happen.
The other person reflects, exposes himself, feels driven to fill the void with more information, and that information can give you exactly what you need to close a deal. You can also use silence as a way to mark authority without aggressiveness. When someone challenges you or throws criticism at you, many times responding immediately strengthens the conflict. But if you pause for a long time, look calmly, and choose to respond from the center, the dynamic changes. The other party perceives your balance, your internal control, and lowers the tone automatically. Silence has that effect, and when you master it, you become a much more powerful communicator. Another way to use silence is to make your message carry more weight. If after a key statement you pause, what you said is amplified. It has more impact because you are giving space for the idea to settle. The pause works as an emotional underlining, and in intense negotiations where every word matters, knowing when to shut up and when to pause is as important as knowing what to say. Most people fear silence because they associate it with discomfort, with tension, with weakness, but you can re-signify it as a tool of precision, an interval of power, an elegant and strategic way to influence without having to raise your voice. At the end of the day, active listening is not a passive skill. It is an advanced form of leadership. It is the smartest way to obtain information, build trust, and position yourself as a person who not only speaks clearly, but also understands deeply. In the art of negotiating, those who listen better win more, because influencing is not imposing. It is understanding first and then building. It is receiving without judgment and then responding with force. It is reading the invisible to act with intention, and that is only achieved by those who have learned to remain silent, not to give in, but to lead from another level. The power of your voice begins with the power of your attention. If you are able to listen with all your senses, to read beyond words, to pause without fear, and to respond from awareness, then you have in your hands one of the most effective weapons in any negotiation: silent influence. You don't need to shout. You don't need to convince by force. You just need to master the art of listening as an act of invisible power. Because in a noisy world, those who listen with purpose become someone impossible to ignore. Chapter 5. The Formula of the Expert Questioner. Asking questions is one of the most powerful tools that exists in negotiation, but not all questions are created equal. There are those that open doors, generate conversation, invite reflection, disarm resistance, and reveal valuable information. And there are also questions that close deals, that are precise, firm, clear, designed to guide the conversation towards concrete action. The expert negotiator knows when to use one and when to use another. He doesn't ask for the sake of asking, but each question has a tactical purpose. For example, an open-ended question such as, "What is most important to you in this decision?" not only shows genuine interest, but also reveals priorities that can redefine the entire approach to the negotiation. On the other hand, a closed-ended question, as in, "Seems good if we sign today under those terms?" seeks to concretize the closure. This balance between exploring and directing is what differentiates the average negotiator from the high-level strategist. Mastery of strategic interrogation is about understanding not only what is being asked, but how it is being asked and what effect it has on the other's mind. A common mistake is to bombard with unstructured questions, which can lead to discomfort or mistrust. The real art is to use questions as an architect uses blueprints to build the path of the agreement. Techniques such as progressive scaling, start with broad questions and work your way up to more specific ones. It allows the interlocutor to feel heard, while it also allows the negotiator to gain clarity and control. For example, instead of asking directly, "What is your budget?" a more natural progression would be, "What features are indispensable to you?" followed by, "How much are you willing to invest in something like this?" This sequence gives context, reduces resistance, and opens the door to crucial information. Knowing how to lead a conversation without appearing dominant requires sensitivity, emotional balance, and verbal and nonverbal reading skills. It's not about manipulating, but about leading the dialogue with respect and intention. An effective way to achieve this is by validating the other's answers before continuing. "I understand that you're concerned about that.
Would it be helpful if we explore another option? This conveys empathy, decreases tension, and keeps the flow flowing towards a joint resolution. In addition, the tone with which a question is asked makes all the difference. The same question can sound inquisitive or collaborative depending on the intention you convey. That's why rhythm, intonation, and pause are also part of the expert questioner's strategy. Another advanced technique is to use rephrasing as a precision weapon. When the other answers something vague or confusing, the expert rephrases. So, if I understand them correctly, you are most interested in ensuring that it is correct. This type of intervention not only demonstrates active listening, but also allows the interlocutor to clarify their position, which reduces misunderstandings and accelerates closure. And if at any point the conversation gets sidetracked or emotional, a good question can recalibrate the course. What would it take for this to work for both of you? Those questions that appeal to mutual benefit not only unblock the conversation, but elevate the level of trust. Being an expert questioner doesn't mean talking more, but asking better. Every question should have a clear intention to discover, influence, validate, or close. And the more aware of the power of your questions, the less you'll rely on lengthy speeches or fancy arguments. In real negotiations, great deals aren't closed with impressive monologues, but with the right questions at just the right time. That's the essence of mastery, having the courage to ask what others don't dare, and the wisdom to keep silent when everything has already been said. Chapter 6. The Power of Authority and Clarity in Asking. When it comes to asking for something in a negotiation, whether it's a raise, a better price, an improvement in terms, or even a simple favor, the difference between achieving it or not is usually in the way it's asked. Many people don't get what they want, not because what they ask for is unacceptable, but because they don't communicate it with the necessary clarity and conviction. A strong request is not aggressive, it's not authoritarian in a bad way, and much less offensive.
A strong request is born from the understanding that asking is part of the game. It is part of the process, and when it is done clearly and firmly, it becomes a tool of mutual respect. Those who ask with authority show that they value their time, their work, their proposal, and above all, that they know exactly what they want. That generates trust in the other party because clarity is perceived as professionalism. Ambiguity, on the other hand, raises doubts and can call into question the solidity of your position. One of the biggest obstacles a person faces when asking for something is falling into the trap of insecurity disguised as courtesy. Phrases such as, "sorry to bother, but if it is not too much annoyance," or "only if you can," seem polite, but in reality they convey doubt and lack of certainty. You are not bothering, you are communicating a need, a proposal, or a valid expectation. In the context of a negotiation, courtesy should never replace authority. You can be respectful and direct at the same time. In fact, that's the most effective, because when you ask for something in a fearful or hesitant way, you give rise to the other interpreter that even you aren't sure you deserve it. And if you don't believe in your request, why would the other person? The key is to ask with structure, to know what you want, why you want it, and what you're willing to offer in return. A well-formulated request includes a direct statement of what is desired, a logical and emotional justification, and an open attitude to dialogue. For example, I'm interested in receiving a 15% increase in my salary because of the increase in responsibilities I've taken on in the last 6 months and because I've exceeded the set goals. I'd like to discuss how this can be possible and what else I can contribute that makes sense for both parties. This type of request is clear, respectful, argued, and at the same time, powerful. It leaves no room for doubt about your intention, and at the same time invites the other party to consider the proposal seriously. Many think that insisting is synonymous with being annoying or obnoxious, but in the professional world, insisting is part of the process. The first answer is rarely a resounding yes. In most negotiations, there are objections, doubts, analysis, waiting times. Insisting doesn't mean repeating the same thing meaninglessly, but finding new ways to reinforce your proposal, clarify misunderstandings, provide additional evidence, or simply keep the conversation open. Smart insistence is strategic, not emotional,
And far from making you look annoying, it positions you as someone who knows what you want, who doesn't give up easily, and who is committed to a win-win solution. Authority in a request doesn't come from a high tone of voice or a dominant posture. It comes from internal security, from prior preparation, from knowing what your value proposition is. It comes from knowing your numbers, your merits, your limits, and your options. When someone feels that you know exactly what you offer and what you're looking for, they automatically raise the level of respect with which they treat you. Clarity in communication eliminates friction. Many times, the problem is not what is being asked, but rather not knowing how to explain it well. Therefore, before entering any important negotiation, ask yourself, am I clear about what I want? Do I have solid arguments that justify my request? Do I know how to express it in a direct, respectful way? Am I prepared to handle an objection without taking it as a personal rejection? A person who masters the art of asking with clarity and authority is seen as reliable, professional, and consistent. He doesn't need to embellish his words with necessary justifications or fear silence. On the contrary, he lets his ideas speak for themselves. Sometimes even, the pause after asking for something is more powerful than continuing to talk. It is at that moment that the other person processes, evaluates, and responds. If you fill the silence with nervous explanations, you could weaken your position. But if you hold it serenely, you show that you know what you're worth and that you're comfortable waiting for an answer. Why? Asking hard is not pushing or pressing. It is speaking from certainty, preparation, and clear intention. It is understanding that in a negotiation, what is not asked for is not obtained, and that the language you use when making your requests not only conveys what you want, but also how you value yourself. A good negotiation begins when you yourself believe that you deserve what you're requesting. From that internal conviction, everything else aligns. Clarity and authority don't get imposed, they are transmitted with authenticity. And when you do it well, you not only increase your chances of success, but raise the quality of all your interactions. Chapter 7. How to refute without confrontation. When it comes to negotiating, many people feel anxiety when facing objections or disagreements. They fear that any sign of opposition is a direct confrontation or a personal attack. However, a skilled negotiator not only prepares for these moments, but looks forward to them with serenity because they know that objections are not obstacles, but signs, clear indicators of what matters to the other party, of their fears, desires, and priorities. And if we learn to listen carefully, to interpret the true message behind an objection, then we can rebut without the need to confront. This is one of the most valuable skills in the art of negotiation. Turn tension into connection, conflict into cooperation. It all starts with a pause. The pause, that brief moment of silence that many people dread, is actually a powerful tool. Before you respond to an objection, don't react immediately. Breathe, observe, listen. The pause not only gives you time to think clearly, it also communicates dominance, control, and respect. When you pause, you're telling the other, I'm taking you seriously. I'm considering your words carefully. That alone disarms a lot of tensions, because in a world where everyone is eager to speak up and defend themselves, the one who knows how to keep quiet gains an undeniable psychological advantage. Once you pause, the next thing is to redirect the conversation. If someone says, "That's too expensive," don't take it as a rejection, take it as an invitation. You can respond, "I understand that price is a concern. What value do you expect to get in return?" With that simple question, you not only avoid the confrontation, but you invite the other to collaborate with you in finding a solution. You are demonstrating empathy, but you're also taking subtle control of the conversation. You're not reacting, you are guiding. That's the difference between negotiating instinctively and negotiating with intention. Turning objections into opportunities is of perspective. Many times, what seems like a refusal is actually a question that needs to be resolved. If a customer says, "I'm not sure if this is what I need," the knee-jerk reaction would be to defend the product, but the smart negotiator says, "Help me better understand what you need, then we can see if this is really for you." This response, far from defensive, is proactive. Not only does it reduce resistance, but it strengthens the relationship. You're showing a willingness to help, not push. Another essential principle for countering without confrontation is to avoid a combative tone. The content of your words matters, but tone is everything. You can say the right thing in the wrong way and lose the negotiation. That's why it's vital to speak firmly, but without aggressiveness. You can say, "Let me show you another perspective," instead of, "You're wrong." You can say, "Consider this," instead of, "It doesn't make sense." The language you use is your tool of influence. Master it, and you'll dominate the negotiation. Also, it's critical to validate each other's emotions, even when you disagree. If a person is frustrated or skeptical, ignoring their emotions will only increase tension. But if you say, "I understand this may seem risky," or "I know this is important to you," you're creating an emotional bridge. That bridge is what allows logic to flow. First, you connect emotionally, then you move forward with rational arguments. This is a foolproof sequence. First validation, then proposal. Countering without confrontation also means having clarity on your boundaries. It's not about giving in on everything to avoid conflict. It's about defending your position with respect, without the need to raise your voice or compete. For example, if someone tries to impose, you can respond calmly, "I'm willing to find a middle ground, but I also need to make sure that this works for both parties." That phrase holds power. You're making it clear that you're open to collaborating, but also that you're not going to give up what's essential.
Finally, remember that the goal of rebutting is not to win an argument, but to move forward in the negotiation. A well-managed objection can bring you closer to closure than an automatic acceptance because it shows that the other is involved, that they're thinking, that they care. And if you know how to listen, pause, redirect, and speak with emotional intelligence, each objection can become an opportunity to strengthen your proposal and your credibility. Countering without confrontation is an art that combines self-control, empathy, strategic language, and mental presence. It's the ability to maintain composure in the midst of disagreement, to build bridges where others erect walls, to move forward firmly without pushing. And it is precisely this ability that differentiates ordinary negotiators from truly exceptional ones. In every difficult conversation, in every unexpected objection, you have a choice: react from ego or respond from strategy. Whoever masters this choice dominates the game. Chapter 8: Difficult Negotiations: How to Handle Conflict. Rebutting is not synonymous with confrontation, and this distinction can make the difference between a successful deal and a lost one. Many people believe that defending their point involves raising the tone or being blunt, but true negotiators, those who achieve lasting agreements and generate respect, know that the power is not in the strength of the response, but in the precision of the moment. The pause before the counterattack is not weakness, it is emotional intelligence in its most refined form. When someone raises an objection, our automatic reaction may be to feel attacked or at a disadvantage. However, a conscious pause has a double effect. On one hand, it disarms the other, and on the other, it allows us to think clearly, identify the true root of the objection, and formulate a response that doesn't reactivate resistance, but redirects it. In that small moment of strategic silence, we regain control. Turning objections into opportunities requires first understanding that an objection is not a definitive no, but a sign of interest. If someone wasn't interested, they would simply leave. But objecting is because there's something they need to clarify, resolve, or understand better in order to move forward. This is where the negotiator's ability to read between the lines comes into play. What is that objection really saying? Is it a sincere doubt, a hidden fear, or a strategy to get a better position? The difference between an average salesperson and a master communicator is that the latter doesn't take objections personally, but rather as doors that haven't been opened yet. With the right attitude, each objection becomes a clue on how to get to yes. Instead of saying, "No, that is not the case," a more effective strategy can be reformulated with empathy.
I understand your point, and that is precisely why what you mention is not valid, and that is why it is important to consider that this way it is not contradicted, complemented, attacked, redirected, and kept the conversation on a constructive ground. True mastery in the art of refutation lies in maintaining control without the need to impose oneself. This implies being very clear that the goal is not to win a verbal battle, but to build a bridge, and that bridge must be made of quiet firmness. Disarming tension without losing ground is not giving in, but guiding. It is like an expert dancer who anticipates the other's movement and transforms it into a harmonious, frictionless turn. A powerful technique to achieve this is to validate before responding. Validating does not mean agreeing, it means acknowledging the other's perspective. By doing so, the emotional charge is deactivated, openness is generated, and the counterpart feels heard. From there, they are more receptive to our position. For example, when faced with a phrase like, "I think is very expensive," the response may be, "It is normal for you to feel that way, especially if we have not yet explored all the value that this can bring you." It is validated, softened, and the conversation is directed towards a broader vision. In every negotiation, there are moments where emotions intensify. It is there where most make mistakes, interrupt, contradict, defend themselves with anxiety. The skilled negotiator, on the other hand, breathes. That breathing is not only physiological, it is strategic, because when one breathes, not only is the body oxygenated, but also the thought is oxygenated, and with clear thinking, words acquire precision. That pause is like the rhythm of a musician. It allows the note to sound with impact. Refuting without confronting also implies knowing when not to respond. Not every comment needs a counterattack. Sometimes strategic silence is more powerful than any argument, because silence can generate discomfort in the other, make them rethink their objection, or even retract on their own. In those cases, less is more, and that less is loaded with intention. Learning to refute without confronting is an art that is developed with practice, self-control, and a deep respect for the other. It is not about manipulating, but about influencing with integrity, maintaining a firm position without rigidity, being clear without being aggressive, and above all, not losing sight of the fact that each objection overcome with elegance strengthens not only the negotiation, but also the relationship, because those who feel understood, even if they are not right, become more receptive, and that well-guided receptivity opens doors that otherwise would remain closed. Effective negotiation is not won by force, but by emotional strategy, precise language, and calm leadership that transforms resistance into agreement. That is the true silent victory of the skilled negotiator.
That presence comes from internal control, from knowing who you are and what you are communicating. It's not about making yourself big, but about not shrinking. The same applies to eye contact. Avoiding the gaze generates distrust, but holding it with balance generates connection. The trick is to look carefully, not with pressure. A clean, sincere, unchallenged gaze can be more powerful than 1,000 words. In this sense, security is not in dominating, but in feeling comfortable with yourself and allowing others to feel comfortable too. Projecting security does not require imposing yourself or looking like a trusted robot. True security is felt, not forced. A confident person does not need to try it all the time, and it shows. Speak calmly, move fluently, listen attentively, and transmit clarity effortlessly. To achieve this, body language must be cultivated as a reflection of your internal state. If you are anxious, your body will show it. If you are aligned with your message, your body will amplify it. That's why before improving your body language, it's key to improve your self-dialogue. What you say to yourself before a meeting or presentation will affect how you stand, how you walk, how you express yourself. Influence starts from within. Your body only externalizes it. Finally, remember that body language is not about manipulation, but about connection. It's a tool to build trust, empathy, and clarity. People do not follow who has the perfect posture, but who inspires emotional security. Therefore,
Every gesture should born from the desire to connect, not to impress. Learn to use your body as a channel that conveys authenticity, not as a shield to protect yourself or as a disguise to hide yourself. When you talk with your body, the message comes through more complete, more believable, more human, and that is precisely the power of the influencer, to convince not by imposition, but by presence. Chapter 10. Ethical Persuasion. You win and manipulate. Before you say a single word, your body has already told a story that in a matter of seconds, the other interprets as confidence or insecurity, openness or disinterest, power or weakness. Body language is not a complement to communication. It is the primary channel that determines how what you say is received. An influencer knows that every gesture, every posture, every look, and every movement sends a conscious or unconscious message. That's why mastering body language is not acting or pretending. It's awareness, about learning to observe how you're showing up. Your posture is upright or hunched over. Your gaze is connected or evasive. Your hands are open or closed. Your face reflects attention or distraction. Small adjustments in these aspects can completely transform the way others perceive you. For example, maintaining an open posture with your feet firm, your shoulders relaxed, and your chest slightly projected forward conveys presence. And a person with presence doesn't need to raise their voice or impose themselves. Their attitude alone generates respect. Just as a genuine smile accompanied by a direct look generates closeness, not an automatic smile, but one that comes from inner tranquility. The one that says, "I'm here with you, and I care about this conversation." But it's also essential to understand what to avoid. Many gestures sabotage your communication without you knowing. Constantly crossing your arms can reflect defensiveness. Moving your legs or hands repetitively transmits anxiety. Avoiding your gaze or blinking excessively generates suspicion. Even standing too close or invading personal space can make you uncomfortable and activate a defense response in the other. As an influencer, you must learn to read the emotional space of the other, and for that, the body is key. If someone backs up when you advance, respect that limit. If someone crosses their arms when you make a proposal, don't ignore it. There is probably an internal objection that has not yet been said. Your ability to read the body of the other allows you to adapt your influence strategy more accurately and respectfully. Another key point is the intentional use of gestures. Your hands can be a powerful extension of your message if you use them well. For example, when you emphasize an important point, using a firm hand gesture helps fix the idea. When explaining a concept, using soft, open gestures accompany clarity. Even when you pause, letting your hands rest naturally projects control. But if your gestures are uncoordinated, excessive, or nervous, they distract and detract from authority. That's why it's best to not force movements, but to practice body awareness until your body acts in coherence with your inner state. Rehearsing in front of the mirror or recording yourself on video can be a powerful tool for detecting unnecessary gestures and replacing them with more effective ones. Now, let's talk about security. Projecting security is not the same as appearing dominant. There's a big difference between leading and crushing. The true influencer does not need to raise his chin or widen his chest as if he were a rooster. He does not need to invade the space of the other or mark territory. His security does not come from the body, but is reflected in the body. It is a silent, firm, but respectful security. You can see it in how he enters a room without the need to speak loudly, in how he greets decisively but without aggressiveness, in how he listens attentively and responds slowly. That is the security that impacts, because he does not seek to impress, he seeks to connect. And those who connect influence more than those who impose. Remember, it is not about demonstrating power, but about embodying presence. A forgotten detail is often the rhythm of movements. A nervous person moves quickly with sharp or repetitive gestures. On the other hand, someone who is in control moves calmly with precision. That leisurely pace projects emotional dominance. Not because you're pretending to be interesting, but because you are fully present. You're there, focused, breathing, tuning in. That not only makes you look more professional, but it creates a mirror effect. Others also calm down, open up, listen to you better. And that's where your influence multiplies, because the right words, accompanied by the right body, generate deep impact, and that impact is not easily forgotten. Mastering body language is also an act of respect. Respect for yourself because you express yourself with coherence and authenticity, and respect for the other because you adjust your energy to facilitate good communication. And when you achieve that balance, you don't need to shout to be heard or exaggerate to convince. Your mere presence speaks for you. Your body is already saying, "You can trust me. What I say has weight. I'm here to contribute." And that, in the world of influence, is worth more than any memorized technique. In the end, being a powerful influencer is not only about what you say, but how you say it, and more deeply, about how you embody it. Your body is the bridge between your intention and the perception of the other. Make that body a conscious tool of communication. Speak with your eyes, with your posture, with your pauses. Be clear, but also warm. Be firm, but also empathetic. And above all, be congruent. Because when your body language is aligned with your message, you no longer need to convince. Your presence takes care of that for you. Chapter 11. The perfect closure. The perfect closure is not the last step of a conversation. It is the inevitable consequence of everything you have built before. It's like the final piece of a puzzle that fits together naturally when the others are already in place. A frequent mistake is to think that closing is about convincing or pressuring, when in reality, it's about confirming what has already been understood, felt, and accepted throughout the exchange. There is no magic in the final words if there has not been clarity, empathy, and strategy in the previous ones. That is why the true master of influence doesn't improvise the closure, he provokes it from the beginning.
With each gesture, with each question, with each pause, he brings the other person closer to a point where the right decision feels obvious, comfortable, and even inevitable. Closing with power is closing with elegance, with emotional precision, without friction or doubts, without the other party feeling that he was pushed, but accompanied until that moment. An effective closure begins long before you mention the decision. It begins when you present yourself with confidence, when you listen carefully, when you respond intelligently. Each interaction psychologically prepares the other person to accept a final proposal without resistance. But even with all that preparation, closing requires reading with acuity the small details, the gestures that indicate assent, the subtle changes in the tone of voice, the way someone repeats your words again, or begins to project themselves in the future with phrases such as, "when we start," "when I have it," "I would use it like this." These signs are not accidental. They are the silent evidence that the mind has already accepted what has not yet been pronounced in words. And at that point, closure is not forced. It is invited. It is posed as a natural consequence of what has been discussed. It is not to do it yes or no. If you don't feel like if we take this next step, the language must be soft but safe, direct but kind. Closing is not imposing. It is allowing the decision to emerge on its own. Now, one of the biggest enemies of closure is anxiety. When you feel that you are about to achieve a yes, you can enter a kind of urgency that sabotages the connection you had built. You start talking too much, repeating arguments, trying to justify what was already understood. That excess breaks the enchantment, because the perfect closure occurs in a state of simplicity, where words are superfluous and trust dominates. That's why one of the most powerful habits you can develop is to know how to be quiet at the right time. You make the proposal and then keep silent. Don't fill the space, don't correct, don't over-explain. Just observe. Let the other party process, think, internally connect what you're offering them to what they already want. And if the silence drags on, accept it as part of the process. Sometimes that silence is the final bridge that the other person needs to decide with conviction.
but if you interrupt it, you can make them return to doubt. The art of closing also involves elegantly handling final objections. Just before the yes, it's common for a last barrier to appear, a worry, an excuse, a minimal resistance. Don't take it as a rejection, but as a natural reflection of the human mind, protecting itself from change. That's where your temper and your preparation make the difference. Don't argue, don't fight. Revalidate what you had already agreed upon, rephrase with empathy, and then gently guide towards compromise. Use phrases like, "I completely understand what you tell me. Makes sense, and that's why we structured the solution in this way." Or, "Yes, that doubt is very common. That's why those who have already made this decision did so after reviewing this." It's not about overcoming the other's argument, but about helping them see that their doubt has already been contemplated, that their concern takes place, but that it is not a real obstacle. It is also key to understand that there are many types of closures, and that the best one is the one that adapts to the emotional and rational state of the other. There are soft closures, where you simply ask if everything is clear and proceed. There are progressive closures, where small commitments are asked for that are chained together until the complete agreement is reached. And there are symbolic closures, where the word close is not directly mentioned, but it is taken for granted that it has already been decided. So, we schedule for Mondays. I'll give you the accesses this afternoon. I'll let the team know that we already have you. This type of language assumes the decision naturally, without rigidity, and is usually very powerful when you have cultivated a relationship of trust. Implicit language has a subtle force that is often more effective than a forced or verbally explicit closure. Finally, there is an invisible closure, perhaps the most important, the one that remains in the mind of the other person after the conversation ends. Because even when they say yes, the emotional experience you generated in the interaction will determine whether that yes turns into action, loyalty, recommendation. Therefore, be careful how you finish. Be grateful, authentically. Briefly reinforce the value that the other person obtains with that decision. Project optimism towards what is to come. The way you close defines how the entire interaction will be remembered, and that memory is what opens or closes future doors. Closing well is not only closing with an agreement, it's closing with respect, with dignity, with vision, because you are not closing a conversation, you are opening a relationship. And that is the true power of perfect closure. Chapter 12. Negotiation in Real Life. Negotiating in real life is a skill that makes the difference between those who simply accept what is given to them and those who actively create the conditions of their life. When it comes to negotiating a salary increase, for example, many professionals fall into the trap of fear, doubt, or lack of preparation. However, if you have followed this audiobook from the beginning, you already have a solid foundation of self-confidence, purposeful communication, authority when asking, and strategic listening. All of this is activated in real situations like these. Negotiating a raise doesn't start in the boss's office. It starts much earlier, with your visible performance, with continuous communication of your value, and with the right time to raise it. Asking for a raise with clarity and conviction is not just talking about what you want, but also demonstrating what you have contributed, underlining how you have exceeded expectations, and connecting that performance with concrete results. The key is to present your case not as a demand, but as a logical consequence of your impact on the organization. That is effective negotiation. When we talk about negotiating a contract, whether as an entrepreneur, freelancer, or independent professional, the focus shifts slightly, but the principles remain the same. Clarity in the proposal, the ability to listen to the needs of the other, and the ability to frame the deal as a mutual gain are decisive. Many people negotiate from a position of need, which conveys urgency or weakness. But if you stand from the value you offer, from the resolution you bring, from the transformation you generate, then the client or potential partner perceives it with different eyes. And here come the techniques you have already learned. Formulate questions that reveal priorities, use pauses to generate reflection, and adjust the tone and body language to project professionalism without appearing arrogant. It's not about pressuring to close a deal at all costs, but about masterfully guiding the conversation towards an agreement in which both parties feel that they are winning. Now, if we transfer this to a more personal terrain, such as negotiating a reconciliation, what changes is the sensitivity of the context, but even there, negotiation is still an art that requires listening, clarity, and knowing when to speak and when to be silent. Many times, an argument is aggravated not by what is said, but by the way it is said. Negotiating peace in a broken relationship implies not imposing, but inviting, not pointing out makeups, but recognizing responsibilities, not demanding, but opening spaces to reconstruct. A person who masters the art of negotiation in real life knows when to give in to move forward, when to stand firm on the essentials, and when to let the other person be right too if it means recovering a valuable relationship. To apply everything you've learned step by step, think of this as a mind map that you need to activate in every key situation. Before any real negotiation, prepare your state of mind. Focus on the outcome you want, visualize it as if it was already achieved, and eliminate any emotional noise. Then, identify precisely what you want to ask, how you're going to ask it, and what the other party might say. Anticipating objections isn't about being negative, it's about being smart. Then, bring the conversation with strategic questions, listen more than you speak, and guide without straining. Use your body language to back up what you're saying, not to sabotage it. And when it's time to close, do it with confidence, without fear of them saying no, because no is an end. It's an opportunity to keep negotiating. Throughout this audiobook, we have built together a system that transforms negotiation from something feared to something dominated.
What we learned here is not empty theory, it is living practice. To prove it, it is enough to look at real stories of people who have applied these principles, such as that executive who doubled his salary not because he asked for more money, but because he learned to clearly express his impact. Or that entrepreneur who closed her first big contract simply by listening to the client's hidden needs and adapting her offer with empathy. Or that young man who managed to reconcile with his father after years of silence, not because he insisted, but because he knew how to create a space where both felt heard. Negotiating is not manipulating, it is connecting. It is not convincing by force, it is persuading with truth. And it is not about always winning, but about winning better. Now that you have the tools, the next step is to apply them, polish them, and make them part of your natural way of communicating. Because in real life, the best negotiators are not the most aggressive or the most talkative, but the most aware, clear, and strategic. This is your moment. Negotiate your future, your well-being, your relationships. Negotiate with intelligence, with intention, with power, because everything in life can be negotiated, and now you know how to do it. Conclusion. Master negotiation and transform your world. When you master the art of negotiation, your world changes radically. Opportunities that once seemed inaccessible begin to open. Doors that used to be closed, now ajar with a simple, well-directed conversation. Because knowing how to negotiate not only transforms your results, it transforms your perception of yourself. You no longer see yourself as someone who has to accept what you were given, but as someone who has the ability, intelligence, and preparation to actively create the destiny you want. Negotiating is not a talent reserved for a few, it is a skill that anyone can cultivate. And when you do, you not only improve your financial or professional situation, but you raise your standard of living in every way. Your self-esteem is strengthened, your leadership becomes evident, your ability to influence ceases to be accidental, but becomes intentional. Throughout this audiobook, you have absorbed key principles that are now part of your new way of communicating. You have learned that negotiating is not talking a lot, but knowing how to listen, interpret, and respond with emotional intelligence. You've understood that everything starts with your mind, that a negotiation is first won inside you before expressing yourself outwardly. You have practiced clarity when asking, the power of pauses, congruent body language, and the importance of preparing each interaction as if it were decisive,
because it often is. You discovered that words have weight, but also that silence can be your strongest ally. What is asking is more powerful than affirming, that giving in is not losing, but often winning in the future, that negotiating from your value and not from necessity changes the whole game. You also saw how these principles are applied in real life, from asking for a raise to saving a relationship, from closing a business deal to resolving a family conflict. In each of these scenarios, the person who masters the art of negotiation becomes an agent of change, because not only does he seek his own benefit, but he has the ability to create fair, balanced, sustainable agreements. Someone who negotiates well does not generate resistance, generates collaboration, does not generate mistrust, generates connection, does not impose their will, creates a space where both parties find a better solution. And that, deep down, is a deep leadership skill. That's why the call to action is very clear. Practice every day. Don't wait for a great negotiation to apply what you've learned. Do it on a daily basis. When you discuss an idea with your team, when you set limits with respect, when you offer a proposal, when you ask for something in an informal conversation, each of those interactions is training. That's where your mental reflexes are strengthened, where your voice learns to project authority without aggressiveness, where your mind is trained to think fast and your heart is trained to stand firm without losing empathy. Because negotiating masterfully doesn't mean toughening, it means elevating yourself. And the only way to truly master this is by integrating it into your natural way of living. Make it a habit. Mentally prepare yourself before an important conversation. Write down what you're going to say. Anticipate possible reactions. Practice in front of the mirror if necessary. But above all, go out and face each interaction with the commitment to learn. Because every time you apply what you've learned, you're polishing your most powerful tool, your conscious communication. Remember that what you ask for today, you get tomorrow, because every achievement begins with a request. No promotion, contract, change, or personal improvement happens on its own. It all starts with a request. And those who know how to ask intelligently, clearly, and with conviction have in their hands the power to transform their lives. This audiobook has not just been a compilation of ideas, it has been a process. You have walked step by step through the psychological, strategic, and practical foundations of a skill that can change everything. And now, the only thing left is to act. Don't let this knowledge stay stored in your mind. Take it out into the world. Use it to improve your work, your income, your relationships. Use it to lead with more humanity, to solve with more wisdom, to connect with more authenticity. True mastery begins when what you learn becomes second nature to you. So, wake up every day with a negotiator's mindset. See the world not as a battlefield, but as a stage of possibilities. Speak with intention. Listen with purpose. Ask questions that open doors. Propose agreements that add up. And always remember that what you don't ask for will not be given to you. But what you ask for clearly, which you support with arguments, and what you defend with conviction, sooner or later manifests itself. Because those who know how to negotiate know how to create, and those who create with awareness transform their reality. You have reached the end of this journey, but in reality, this is only the beginning. From today on, every conversation is an opportunity, every interaction a possibility to influence, grow, and transform. You decide if you wait for things to change or if you take the initiative and make them happen. You already have the tools, the knowledge, and the power. Now get out there and use it. Negotiate your future, negotiate your life. And remember, everything in life can be negotiated when you learn how to do it. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you are ready to continue delving into your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click and see you there.
Thank you so much, friend, for listening. Leave your ideas in the comments section so our community can grow by learning together. That's all for now. Until the next audiobook,